Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Today we're talking about chemistry of your team. Look, you can have the greatest product in the world, but if you don't have a strong team chemistry, your company's ultimately going to fail. Today's quote, skills are cheap, chemistry is expensive. Any idea who said that, JC?
No idea.
You know, apparently it's some guy named Mal Pancoast, and I've never heard of him before, but he's all over the internet with, like, quotes. So he must be amazing.
Sounds like a smart guy. He's got it on the right topic right now.
Absolutely. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Our mission is to disrupt recruiting. We share insights from top-performing entrepreneurs and industry experts and provide proven tactical solutions to solve your company's toughest hiring challenges. Today, our guest is JC Ruffalo. He's the Director of Launchpad and Investor Relations for Octane OC. JC joined Octane in 2014 as the Director of Launchpad, and he mentors hundreds of companies each year and has assisted Launchpad companies to achieve over $750 million in capital infusion, and as a result has created about 3,500 new jobs in SoCal. Good job, buddy.
Great organization.
Prior to Octane, JC founded co-founded a small startup called Double Splash Media, which was involved with email marketing. So he's an entrepreneur as well, which makes him a perfect person to discuss this topic. JC, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Thanks, Rick. Good to be here.
Absolutely. So we're going to cover a few things today. We're going to talk about why chemistry is so important, how to monitor your team chemistry, and what to do to encourage or change your chemistry. So let's start with the obvious, right? Let's talk about what a good team chemistry looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's creative, it's synergistic, it's collaborative, it's all those fun buzzwords that you hear, but it's really about how that team implements and exchanges all of those fun buzzwords, right?
Yeah.
And that happens whether you're in business, whether you're in sports. It's all about how you work off each other, and even in your life, right? How your relationships are built. So chemistry is hugely important, and especially in business. And what I see is good companies go to die when they don't have a good team because some problem just arises where it's ego or something gets in the way and the team just can't work together anymore.
So very true. Now, so, you know, it's very important at the sport, like the professional sports level. Chemistry is everything, and they actually bring people over to enhance the chemistry.
Exactly.
Why don't entrepreneurs think of it that way?
Yeah, you're right. Why don't they?
Why don't we start thinking about chemistry first, product second?
Yeah. Those that have been there and experienced and been an entrepreneur many times, they've experienced that, and that's what they do look for is team fits. Because you could spend hundreds of dollars or recruiting at an agency or thousands, but it's all about how that company,
I don't know what agency does $100.
No. I meant it more like they spent
thousands.
You could lose thousands of dollars basically hiring the wrong professional.
Well, potentially hundreds of thousands
exactly.
Of dollars. Yeah, I mean, the estimate is that a bad hire costs you about 3 times whatever you're paying them.
Right.
So if you're paying somebody $100,000, you're losing out on $300,000. That's scary. Right. So, I was doing some research for the show. I love Google, right? So, I think it was I found on Wikipedia they were talking about what good chemistry does to the body from a psychological perspective. Your brain produces a lot more oxytocin, which is the hormone that makes us feel good, right? So higher levels of oxytocin produce a more pleasure, deeper trust, and a stronger intimacy in and around the team. So why not cultivate that within your organization? Why not build that out? I think it's just hard, right?
Yeah,
to even think about it.
It's extremely hard to think about and trying to forecast for. But when you do have that, I have been in team experiences where I felt that kind of level of extra energy that I want to prove more than I'm already trying to be challenged with. I want to even go above and beyond that because I know the team that's surrounding me, I want to support them. It's kind of that family setting, if you will. And that can happen even in a large corporation where you can build that inner trust within your circle.
I think there are some large corporations that actually do a very good job at that.
Absolutely.
Building in chemistry. I mean, chemistry is also another kind of derivative of culture, right? So let's talk about the adverse, right? Bad chemistry, because I see probably 90% of the companies out there, or I would say a good 70% of the companies out there have a bad chemistry among the team, the people. I mean, they have toxic cultures, right? So let's talk about destructive chemistry. What would you say would be kind of a good example of something that's disruptive?
Oh, man.
Destructive, I think.
Destructive, yeah. And disruptive, because it can throw the whole team off.
Yeah.
Whether it's making a bad decision by one individual who's just lets their priority get in the way of the whole team, that's probably one of the most common themes that you see.
Yeah.
But there's so many different examples that are out there that go around that same theme, where it's just bad decision making, or someone's withholding information, or they're not really being there to support everyone else.
So we're talking about leadership, right? And
Right.
we're talking about really the communication between the members of the team and how well they interact.
Yeah.
So is that a biological thing, or is that just a learned response?
I think with leadership, it's something that you're able to adapt to, and when you recognize it, you definitely want to step in. Those that are the good leaders will step up and make sure to pivot and change.
So what then should people be looking at? I mean, how do I identify that you have a bad chemistry? I mean, you look at companies and you talk to companies all the time. Have you interviewed people and said, "Oh God, the chemistry between those two people, those three people are terrible"?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And for our program, we see hundreds of companies a year, 300, 400 at the minimum. It's almost impossible to count specifically how many, but we see lots of companies. And even for investors, when you go through our whole process to completion, and then introductions with investors or any other strategic relationship we can provide, the first thing that anyone really looks for is how the team really interacts.
Yeah.
Maybe not on a day-to-day basis, but at a high level. They kind of interview. As the investors kind of say, they invest in the jockey, not so much the horse. They believe
absolutely.
the tech is sound, but they want to really believe in the CEO and the leadership team ability to hire the right people and make the right influence to those individuals to keep them synergistic and working together.
So how do you know you have bad chemistry? I mean, I would imagine people who are being disrespectful to each other, yelling and screaming at each other, kind of the obvious things. But what about the not so obvious things?
Yeah, and I've even seen where it's like chaotic disruption, but it can even be productive. It can be like an organized. Yeah, it's just sometimes things can work out serendipitously where something can happen, but in terms of the really negative aspects to it, sometimes that can outweigh that risk of actually having a problem solution where the team's not maybe getting along. So it's that constructive friction, if you will, creative friction. And sometimes like a good leader can recognize that and challenge people to fit together. But it's also a lot of risk because it could really flip over real quick.
Yeah, so that comes down to how they handle it, right? Or how so you really have to look into and dig into how people deal with issues and how they communicate them.
Exactly.
So in the due diligence process on your guys' end, you dig into that quite.
We dig it at a high level. Okay. We usually work with the company and we base off, what they're working on, what stage they're at, but really also about the team, how well they're able to take feedback, how well they're able to take constructive criticism. That shows a lot in terms of their leadership style and kind of how they're going to pivot even when they're doing the day-to-day business. That you can kind of tell a lot from kind of that emotional IQ you're getting off of from that individual.
Yeah, absolutely. So dropping the ball, personal issues. I think you shared with me a story about kind of personal issues. You care about talking about that, right?
Yeah, I've had several startups. One of my earliest ones, really, I had a lot of responsibility on another individual business partner, and he failed to really deliver in a time of necessity and really making sure that the company was sound. And got involved in the wrong types of crowds, if you will. I was young, so you really learn quick. You can't just do business with friends or family and stuff. You can, but sometimes you let your personal emotion get in the way rather than your professional.
True.
And so, I've had to pivot and change and make sure that I'm picking the right team around me to surround myself so that I can be challenged and that I can challenge them back. But I've had some crazy stories too that didn't turn out so well, and you learn from those, and you learn from those scars, and you make sure, okay, I don't want to reopen that wound. I want to make sure I don't get another scar either. So how can I, make sure I'm identifying certain things in individuals that I want to bring in as a team, or join a team.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up wound because that's always a big thing with me.
Yeah.
So, people who lie. I mean, so the warning signs that you have bad chemistry. I mean, a lot of times you get caught up in the minutia of the work, and you don't realize that your culture is toxic and your chemistry is bad, right?
You drink too much of your own Kool-Aid, as they say.
Yeah. You really have to open your eyes. So, make sure that people are adding value, that they're not afraid of adding value. Don't yell at your people.
Right.
I mean, these are just kind of obvious things, but I hear stories about people doing it all the time.
Yeah. Funny story. I mean, I ran a company called Global Truck Supply, and then I partnered with some family on some stuff. And one of my family members would curse and scream and yell, but it was kind of out of love, but kind of out of this. He taught me how to talk like a pirate, really unprofessionally, right? And a bad pirate.
How did I transfer over to Octane?
I had to go, okay, gotta make sure I'm monitoring my word selection here. But the dynamic was different when I was working with him.
Yeah.
And it can happen in certain industries where there is kind of that tense dynamic. But it's not so much out of disrespect. It's more out of, okay, well, I need to make sure I'm within my bounds and I'm not doing anything because I don't want to trigger that. But sometimes that trigger, even when he was kind of, if you will, just normal talk, it almost sounded like discipline to learn and pivot and make sure I was changing what I was doing. That could kind of upset him like that. That was his way of communicating. And some individuals and leaders have a bad way of communicating like that individual. But you kind of still learn from it and you go, okay, I don't want to be like that. I want to handle it in a certain way. Because, I've been in those shoes, right? So you kind of go, okay, how can I transfer that into my own language, if you will, and word selection?
Yeah, want to hear a little secret? I used to be like that.
Yeah.
Back when I first got into the recruiting business, it was kind of like, you just tell people to shut up and make a cold call. Like it was not.
And a few
cool.
adjectives scattered about.
Yeah. You have a question? All right. Ask me after you make a cold call.
Yeah.
That's the world I grew up in, and that's what I learned, I think, from my manager. So it was. He got away with it. I didn't get away with it.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah, so it was bad. So how do we monitor chemistry?
That's a great question. You got to have an open platform of communication across team members.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's on the same page. I can't tell you how many times people just don't get on the same page or refuse to get on the same page or just aren't listening and will miss a certain topic. So as a leader, and there has to be not just one, it has to be like the team monitoring each other to make sure they're being honest and being open and communicative on all topics across what they're working on.
Well, first off, the leaders need to be on the same page.
100%.
You guys need to 100% be on each other's, like have each other's backs.
Yeah, and the leader should also deliver the message of what it wants to do internally so that the internal communications can then expose that to the external.
But not just deliver the message, live the message.
Exactly.
You're
right.
You can't do as I say, not as I do.
Even better. Yeah. Absolutely.
That downgrades so much credibility in the minds of the employees.
You're right.
All right. So walk the walk.
Yeah.
What's that saying again? Walk the talk?
Something like that. I mean, some of the most influential leaders, and Charles Schwab is one of those that was a capitalist and did great things and helped a lot of people, but didn't do some great things. But what he really did well in terms of his leadership style was he was quick to stop and try and make the other person feel inferior. He tried to make them feel really self-confident, and so he was very quick with praise. And when you build that praise and you inspire your own individuals within your team, that can be more rewarding than any kind of financial or monetary salary or anything like that. That kind of feeling of self-worth and being a part of that team. And so you want to make sure you're monitoring your team to that effect, where you're quick on praise, even if it's the team working with each other, saying good job or just something like that, inspiring your other teammate to feel good. Yeah. Some people just have outside problems that they come to work and that's their life. That's their family, if you will, at work. And they want to feel appreciated.
Yeah, and you have to take the time to get to know what's going on.
Exactly.
It's not get to the coal mines and,
right.
and keep slaving away.
Yeah.
Praise is, so there's 3 reasons why people tend to look for new opportunities. One would be growth, content of work would be second, and then leadership issues being third. And praise is often linked to like the lack of leadership issues.
Yeah.
Did I just say that correctly? So
leadership issues. Yeah, lack of leadership within the organization, right?
Yeah.
Being challenged, feeling appreciated, and make sure you're adding value to the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And showing that you appreciate the work that's being done.
Right.
All right, leaders. So we're beating you over head today. All right, so setting up a system of checks and balances and really praising your people is probably going to cut down your having to monitor your chemistry too often, right?
Right.
You just check in on it every once in a while.
Yeah. There's no real science to it or art. It's kind of a balance of both, and you kind of make sure that you're keeping, as a leader or even as the team member, make sure you're integrated and you're on the same page, because you don't want to fall a page behind or you be too far in front of the pack. You want to make sure that you're in the striking distance of everybody. Absolutely.
If you're just joining us on the live stream or the podcast, our guest today is JC Ruffalo. He's the Director of Launchpad and Investor Relations for Octane OC. We just discussed a little bit about chemistry and what it is and how to get it better. And now we're going to talk a little bit about how to bring it into your interview process and what to do when the chemistry is bad, how to change it. So, JC, I personally love bad team chemistry. For my business, it's good because if I run off the statistics, about 70% of people who are engaged in their current role are either disengaged or disenchanted with their current company, right? So that means there's probably bad team chemistry. They're not keeping their people happy. Makes it so much easier for me to recruit your people. So make it difficult for me, people.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about interviewing. So any thoughts on how to, you've got a good team. How do you uncover chemistry in the interviewing process?
You got to ask good questions. As much as the interviewer is, you really got to ask good questions back, because it's your life, and time is everything. Yep. So you don't know what you're going to step into. So you want to just make sure you're asking good questions, being like, whether it's the leader who's interviewing you and what his experience is, or who he's brought in around him, what their experience is, what they've done, kind of learning about their track record and getting to know their kind of involvement with what they're working on and which department. For me, I want to be surrounded with inspiring other individuals, and I hope that most people want the same. I know not everybody, but you really want to surround yourself with good people, because as I said first, time is everything. So you're investing your time into the company as much as the company's investing their time and work with you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first off, you really need to be able to convey that vision of who you are and what you're trying to achieve as a company as a whole, as opposed to So as a team, from a chemistry perspective, you really need to understand yourself and your business needs.
Yeah.
Building the company isn't about building you and your own personal ego. It's about building the company.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And somebody was telling me the other day, or I heard a quote the other day about how, you can go somewhere fast with one person, but to go far, you need a team.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we really want to make, as I said, you're investing your time. You want to add value in what you're doing and feel appreciated and accomplished. And that's really what a lot of people should be doing. And too many people, sadly, and to your benefit, settle, right?
Yeah.
You just feel comfortable settling with that. And sometimes that's where great people, great new ideas that could potentially happen just go to die.
Yeah.
They don't get that inspiration or that self-worth or that self-confidence to try something.
Yeah, and you know what? Great performers become underperformers when they're not motivated.
Exactly.
And what ends up happening is now somebody else taps them on the shoulder and says, hey, look, we've got everything that you don't have in your current company.
Right.
Come here.
Yeah, and that can be that if they're willing to take that chance.
Most of the time they are.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Hopefully. Yeah.
I mean, if you properly position it to where you're kind of helping to solve or cure their career wound, as you mentioned earlier.
Right.
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely.
You link that to whatever they're desiring out of their career, and then that person's going to take off once they hit the ground running. Once they get started. So vetting people. I think we talked on the phone, and you said, companies need to do a much better job of vetting people.
Mm-hmm.
And you also made a statement that honesty is not that common.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because, hey, I totally agree with you. And I was taught earlier in my career, everybody lies, right? So how does one do a really great job in vetting people? What do you guys look at?
For us, we don't...
You don't get too involved in that?
We don't get too involved in that, but I will speak from my personal experience in terms of vetting people. I'd like to think that I have a pretty good social IQ in terms of being able to read how that person's talking to me. I play a lot of poker, so I feel like I can read people's poker face. If they show an expression, then I'm going, okay, that kind of throws me off. But I do a lot in terms of my people bringing in that I've kind of helped and hired, it's definitely been about how that person works with me. And it's not that right away you're going to come work today. It's more about you do the interview, you go get something personally with them. Maybe it's a cup of coffee, and just do some sort of communication to a different level of them coming in full time right away.
Yeah.
You kind of want to build that trust with them, so you're kind of on that trial run with them as well as they are with you.
Yeah.
And I've had a really good way of just being able to read people and seeing where they are at, and always kind of looking for a reference. It's a small world out there with technology. So
absolutely,
you could easily look, whether it's on LinkedIn or social media, or somehow kind of vet somebody and say, hey, I've been talking to so and so. I saw that you might know them. What are your thoughts on them? I've had great conversations, or I've had not so great conversations.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's one way to kind of keep checks and balances too.
That's so prevalent in my industry, where there's a lot of backdoor references that go on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's so common. It's
yeah.
Hey, I noticed you work with so-and-so over here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly.
Walk me through, the situation. And you do get to the truth that way, for sure.
Right.
And I always state that the purpose of the interview is to get to the truth. So if you're not asking questions to get to the core of who that person is, you're guessing at the chemistry.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
You got to fill your gut with the right information to make sure that that person is going to have a reasonably successful time at your company.
Exactly. And they're going to produce something that can help benefit everybody. Right. I mean, honesty is so uncommon. It's sad.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to white out certain areas of their life or really intensify what they've done. And, you just kind of got to have your flag up and your monitor up, your radar, if you will, whatever kind of analogy I want to use. But you really just got to be on guard. And not to say that the three-strike rule should apply, but it's something you should kind of check and say, okay, well, maybe they just, overwrote some statement or said something, and, I'll give them that one strike. And then, okay, maybe, shame on me once, shame on me again. Now really shame on you for the third time. I should have known better.
Yeah. Well, the takeaway from this is, one, don't hire family.
Yeah. No.
I'm just kidding. And then secondarily, I think you have to approach it with a, you hear the common term, hire slowly, fire fast.
Yeah.
And you have to live that. That really makes, when you start seeing things that are going to creep up, especially early on in that relationship, it's just going to amplify once that time goes on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So take an optimistic pessimism to what you do.
I like that.
All right. So, one suggestion I like to do is, you're looking for evidence. Behavioral questions are the best way to get to the heart of those. And if you know if you don't know what they are, you can Google them. I do another podcast where we talk about behavioral interviewing, which is great. But I like to also build in knockout questions, which are one question that is geared toward my core company values to make sure that person's in alignment.
Right.
And if somebody doesn't answer it correctly, or they're completely off of alignment, just walk away. Mm-hmm. Move on.
Yeah, don't get in bed with them for the long haul if you're already seeing those flags.
Yeah, it's like, bad relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think the other thing we talked about, well, we started to touch on it, but, what do you do when you finally realize the chemistry is bad? If I'm a company, I'm coming to you and you say, hey, look, your tech is great, we like you, but you guys have some chemistry issues. Mm-hmm. What do you advise them on what to do, or do you give them?
I mean, you might give them. I mean, depending on how far it's progressed. I mean,
or you
case by case.
Fix it, bro.
Yeah, nah. Yeah, you might. Sometimes you might want to knock their heads together and be like, "You guys need to come together and fix this, and be solution oriented." And I feel like that's a real key takeaway. Is too many people like to criticize rather than come up with a solution. Right? They're quick to say problem or point.
The blame game.
Yeah, the blame game. You need to be quick to a solution. So it's whether you get those two knuckleheads together or the chemistry that's not working out, you maybe need to sit down with them, have that first conversation, see how they handle it, and then based on where that comes or where that evolves to, you got to go, okay, well, maybe it's one of them, maybe you got to let go of both of them. If it gets that bad, you need to take that sort of action because, as you mentioned, why would you want things to get progressively worse than where it already is?
God, okay, so what if me as the founder, I'm the problem? I'm the person with the bad chemistry.
Yeah, well, if you're the founder and you have a board, your board will definitely, hopefully, notice that too. So
they'll give you the money and kick you out.
Hey, it's happened.
Oh, I know.
And you know what? The best CEOs will kind of recognize that I want a little bit of something rather than a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
So they want to be like, I want to do what's best for the organization. So whether that's me, I step down, or I take a different role, or just walk away completely.
But often that's really hard for
really
entrepreneurs because
yeah.
that's their baby.
Exactly. And I've been there. Yeah, I've been there.
And so what ends up happening is the company ends up dying.
Exactly.
To their own demise.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy. That's where great ideas go to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. So communicate, identify, and change with minimum impact to the organization, right? And then hire slow and fire quickly.
Right.
Those are our takeaways.
Amen.
All right, so how do we cultivate great chemistry? We'll give you a little action plan, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. What do you got?
Wow, team building. I mean, anything that involves, like, whether you're going out to the beach together, you're going, like, on a, going out to the zoo or something as a team, you got to kind of create those kind of synergies where everyone gets to step away from their office and go work together in a at a different level personally.
Yeah.
Because that's where trust really evolves.
And make sure everyone has a voice.
Amen. Yeah.
And
call upon those that do not like to speak up. Yeah. Challenge them because that's what they need.
They definitely need that.
And that's what a good leader will do, is recognize those that are maybe a little bit more on the quiet side, but those quiet ones probably have the greatest ideas.
With any customer, and if you think about it, your employees are your customers as the leadership, you got to listen to them.
Yeah.
And you have to be approachable.
You really do. Many leaders like to seclude themselves in the office. But I think today it's changing in the open environment landscape in terms of the office.
Yeah.
So everyone's being able to communicate. Slack's, for good teams. They use a lot of good things. So, things are definitely things are shifting, and people are being more open, and technology's really surged that as well. So I'm excited. I'm optimistic for the future that there are better ways to problem solve bad team chemistry.
Yeah, just take your CEO and just have him be a text messenger, and that's it. You're no longer allowed to talk to any of the employees.
That's one solution.
Just text. Yeah, that could be good or bad, right?
Yeah, that sounds more on the bad side. But
I know, right?
Case-by-case basis, I guess.
Or hire a PR person to do all the writing for him, and then there you go. All right, we're just about out of time for today's show. JC,
thank you.
Thanks so much for your time investment today, and I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community.
Much appreciated.
Now, I'm sure there's some companies out there that would love to find out more about Launchpad and what you're doing over there, so how do they reach you?
Well, you could always email me. My email is JC, J as in Jeffrey, C as in Charles, at octaneoc.org. Again, that's JC at octaneoc.org. Or you could check out our website, octaneoc.org. That's www at the beginning.
Perfect.
Yeah, octaneoc.com. We're a great organization. We're here to help benefit the ecosystem here in Southern California, and really help grow job growth and capital infusion, and bring the whole technology and life science ecosystem to a stronger forefront.
And you guys do an amazing job with a lot of companies. I got to interview some of your Launchpad companies at TIFF, which is the Technology Innovation Forum for some of you who are listening in.
Yeah.
And which is another great event. And you guys you do events all the time.
We do about 50 events throughout the year.
There's one tonight.
We have one tonight. Yeah, our summer social right across the street, actually.
I'm going.
I love it.
Woohoo.
You.
All right. So I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. A quick thanks to our team, our engineer, Paul Roberts, our producers, Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and Kim Iverson. Please subscribe, rate, and review all our episodes. We need your input to improve the show and make it better for you. So you can join the Higher Power Radio community at Higher, that's H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, Radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or subscribe to Higher Power Radio on iTunes. We just got on iHeartRadio.
You!
Woo! Google Play, or you can find us on all your podcasting favorites. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook as well at Higher Power Radio Show, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter.
Anything else?
I know, right? Wow, that was long. All right, so I want to end this with a quote because I found this really awesome quote that I love, and I'm going to probably just build it into the show from now on. Smart people learn from everything and everyone. Average people learn from their experiences. Stupid people already have the answers. Do you know who said that?
No idea.
All right, I'm going to go back to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Is it?
Crates.
No way.
Socrates. All right, tune in next week.
Awesome.
Our guest is going to be Aaron Wilson. Aaron is a returning offender. He's the co-founder and talent engineer of Higher Pool Inc. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard on OC Talk Radio.